to whack him while I turn the because he knows I don't really like spiders. I'm one of those, isn't there a word for it? Anacron something or other. Anyway, good morning everybody on streaming. This is Gulf Harbour Radio, ZMH 286. Slightly distracted by a huge spider in the control room here. Must like the heat, which we haven't had an awful lot over the weekend, I might add. It has been horribly, horribly windy. Saturday was just abysmal here in New Zealand, particularly in the North Island, and particularly here on the ridge at Gulf Harbour. Just 25 to 37 knots all day, so not very wonderful. I'm sure Whistler down there at Gulf Harbour are wondering what on earth they've come to. But November is a windy month, folks, as you Kiwis will know. It's less wind today. It's only 15 degrees at the moment, but yeah, that's better than it could be. It's about 35% cloud cover, very humid, 75% relative humidity. And about 10 to 15 knots from the southwest. So we actually had a good dry day, well, mostly dry day yesterday, so we quite enjoyed what we did yesterday, which was good. We did a big, long driving rally thing with our car club and then a shoot, so we fully used yesterday, and I think we got to a couple of the people. There sounds to be a big gaggle of boats leaving Fiji today. Well, I think that's the total flotilla, not a gaggle. But anyway, there are a lot of boats leaving Fiji today. A couple more going to be coming behind Sika from Opua, or coming with Sika from New Caledonia to Opua, and trying to catch Alcyon on the way there. So all in all, quite a lot of activity. So we'll try and get organised fairly quickly this morning. So good morning to all you listening from Denarau whilst you are frantically getting ready. And we will be certainly covering that this morning, having had a chance to talk to David. There's not a great deal of news. I was just telling Jan and Sika before about the New Caledonia elections, which were held. And it does appear that they have all agreed, all 270,100 of them have agreed to stay within the French umbrella. Would be very stupid not to, because they do get over $1 billion worth of aid in one form or another. They get inclusion in the more sensible part of the world, and I think the now 40% Kanaks are being somewhat better included and looked after than they were 20 years ago. So I think we'll see some fair stability in New Caledonia. Ahead of the midterm elections in America, which of course are going to be of key interest to a lot of people, particularly as it's sort of a thermometer on what everybody thinks of the Trump elections. They are on Tuesday, which of course is our Wednesday. So US House and Senate races, plus key contests for the governor. It will certainly be widely looked at by folk not even connected to America. A lot going on in America. There were 4 killed when a truck hit Girl Scouts. This was in Wisconsin, just northeast of Eau Claire. They were doing a garbage picking up trash exercise on the road, and the truck plowed through them, killed 4, badly injured another. So that was a very poor start to whatever badge that was going to be. There was a big car crash in China. Again, a truck. It ran out of control near a sort of where a highway sort of came into where you pay your tolls, and it hit an enormous number of cars, killed 15 people, and about 40 others injured. So that was a pretty bad scene also in the city of Lanzhou. We've been following this boat, Suzanne. She's actually the third in her long route. There's two groups going around the world. She's in the long route on Nihaj, and she's now at 46.43, way down south, and 179.33. So very close to the bottom of New Zealand, and she's doing pretty well, being third in a rather large group there. What else is there? There's Oh, for those that are of Indian descent, the 5-day festival of Diwali starts. We actually had the festival over the weekend. It's a pretty flexible festival here in Auckland. We had it over the weekend. Boy, it would have been windy. It's the Hindu Festival of Lights. It starts this week in most other places. It celebrates the triumph of good over evil. We'll do a bit more of that. And it's also the start of the financial year for Indians. So if you are Indian and you are in Fiji, you will notice quite a lot of celebrations going on there. President Trump, actually, believe it or not, even with the midterms on, he is going to head to Europe at the end of this week because Armistice Day is coming up, of course, and there's quite a big meeting of world leaders that are no longer battling each other. France, Mr. Macron and Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, Mrs. Merkel, believe it or not. And so that's all going to be going on at the end of the week when the Armistice Day celebrations start. It's a very big celebration this year because it's the 100th anniversary. So not sure that we've progressed all that well in 100 years from what was the world to end all worlds, but there you have it. All right, we have a few comments coming in on streaming, so I'll just cover those first. It's cloudy in Vivalia. It's pretty cloudy everywhere, but not too bad. 12 to 15 knots from the southeast. Thank you from Y2K. 8 ready and dinner hour, he says, and another 5 on the list from Bunda, the gaggle that's leaving. Citrus Tart. Oh, hello, Michelle. Just returned from Whalanga. There can't be too many people left in Whalanga, and they're going to leave for New Zealand from Suva, and Andiamo is going to be ready this morning. So quite a lot of activity of everybody saying hello and greetings. Don't think there's too much more on. Oh, and I was very pleased, Ron, on Pilgrim there. He has found the trouble with his radio, you will all be pleased to know. Checked the connections and one of them fell apart to the tuner. So that at least showed where the problem was. So tough luck, Ron. We'll be able to get you to help us find some votes today. That'll get you working and give it a good test out. Okay, I think that's about it for folks. And we are going to just do a bit of a pause to see if there's anybody with anything in particular before we go to weather. Hopefully the boats from Minerva Reef got the message to leave yesterday to just make sure they got in time without any stresses. I know Sedna can't come in on this particular frequency, but hopefully we'll hear you on the Hamnet later. For those that are hams, 14315 at 2100 UTC is a good one to be on because we've got net controllers both sides of the Tasman, so we'll be able to pick you up. But is there anybody wanting to come in now? Tusi2, and I did find your report. It looks like it's finally calmed down for you guys, Mike. Not so strong a signal this morning, but you're nearing our cut-off point. Go ahead with your current position, Mike. Over.
Yes, our position is 29010 Delta 17648.
I've got that, and I was just checking, well, I did find you here, I just checked that it was made sense. 29er, good show. Boy, you've moved pretty well. 29er south and 17648 east. Carry on.
Yes, our heading is 175.
Okay, you've got 1018 dropping. I've got your course 175 magnetic. I think it was 6. You just did a little bit of a dive. And the wind strength, please. I think I've got southeast, but I need the strength. southwest. Okay, southwest wind there. And did I get the 6 knots right for your speed? Yeah, it's fading fast as you get to that magical 30 line, but at least we've got it, and I will put it onto YIT for you. All right, so yeah, that's a good sign, folks. We used to get to 30 degrees, but the propagation at the moment is starting to fade at 29.
Light southerlies.
So you will get light southerlies tomorrow. It's 2C2, light southerlies tomorrow. Or southerly quadrant. It'll be floating around there. One way or the other, so I might have to do a zig or a zag or a motor, but I'm sure you've got good fuel on board. Alright, we'll probably pick up others near there after David's finished, because the sun will be a little bit more helpful. It's 100% cloud cover here now. It was 70, well, it was a bit lower than that before. Better correct that. 100% cloud cover here in Gulf Harbour at the moment. Just those grey, horrible Auckland days. I can't stand them. But anyway, November won't take long to disappear. Here's David.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And we'll take a look at 500 millibar early today. And we've got a very sharp shortwave trough that's sitting just to the east of New Zealand. This is the one that's been bothering the country, well, for most of last week. So it's finally shifted east a little bit. We've got cyclonic isoheights, in other words, the flow of air at 500 millibar is in a cyclonic type of arrangement, and that extends all the way up to Fiji, believe it or not. And over the Tasman, we have a new ridge. A new ridge is found, and it's being followed by a trough that's nearing the bight. So this is our typical sequence, trough, ridge, trough, that sort of thing. Now, on the surface and north of New Zealand is the forecasted high that we talked about on Friday. Fairly mild, pretty mellow one. I would say about 1022 millibar. The high center, well, the high center itself is basically spreading west to east, and within that is a quasi-stationary front. And all of the en route yachts, I'm afraid, are going to encounter this bit of cloud. You can see it pretty clearly on satellite imagery. It's not a major frontal band, but it is a very, very slow-moving frontal band, and it's just smack dab in the way of everyone heading south. And you'll encounter that. In fact, 2C2 should be looking at it right about now. By tomorrow, our high is going to, well, it won't have moved very much at all. Still estimated to be about 1022 millibar. Now, in the Tasman, we're going to find cyclonic isobars in with a whole series of fronts and troughs as well. By late Wednesday into Thursday, the high probably grows to about a 1026, and it's going to lie just now to the east of New Zealand, and it will be extending a ridge toward Australia. Now, those of you that are departing today for New Zealand, most of you are coming from Fiji, from what we could gather, a few from Newcastle, but mostly from Fiji. You should find east-southeast winds up to about 20 knots, easing to maybe 15 to 20 when you get down around 20 south. Now, by Thursday of this week, jumping a couple of days, the winds still east-southeast, slowly shifting to easterlies once you get down to 30 south. By Friday, between 27 south and New Zealand, the winds are going to start off being easterly and then backing a bit to north-northeast on arrival to New Zealand. So depending upon when you get to New Zealand, that's about the sequence of winds. Very trade winds, slowly backing until finally we get to northerly quadrant winds, and then finally we get a frontal band. Now by Saturday, which is the 10th, northwest winds, as you can see, the wind keeps backing. So northwest winds are going to precede the next frontal band that we've been talking about. Once you get through the front, or the front goes through you, a better way to put it, expect southerlies and then southeast winds over your entry into the New Zealand area. So again, it's all a matter of where you are and when that's going to be. We've got people scattered virtually everywhere now. So a little bit complicated to give all of the winds because of that. Now by the 12th, Monday, our high, this high that we've been talking about, is going to be approaching New Zealand with trade winds at that point from New Zealand all the way up to the islands. The high is going to move very little out to Wednesday the 14th. Nor is the wind direction going to change much. We're still looking at south-southeast near New Zealand. It'll be southeast at around 30 south, and that direction will be pretty much holding all the way up to the islands, or vice versa, from the islands down to 30 south. So that high is going to dominate, in other words, and that's looking pretty good. It's just a matter of that frontal band getting done with that, and then the high and the high circulation takes over. So passage-wise, things look decent to New Zealand, but roughly Saturday morning, expect the frontal band that we are forecasting, and that becomes filled very quickly, I think, and that's going to be followed by a new high with the southeast winds that we just talked about, give or take that direction, and that'll go right through Thursday, the 15th of November. Now, bear in mind that this is out over 240 hours. That's over 10 days. So model accuracy is only going to be approximate at that point. And what we're giving you now is just that. It's an approximation. Now, those of you who left Minerva, we'll call you the Minerva yachts, those of you that left Sunday, will find on Friday northwest winds as you come close to the Bay of Islands getting into Okua. The depression and its associated frontal band is going to be just past the midpoint between Australia and New Zealand. So your arrival on Friday, and it should be around Friday, shouldn't be much longer than that, looks pretty decent. Now the front itself, upon its arrival to New Zealand, as I said earlier, it looks to weaken fairly quickly. So those of you that are underway at that point should not find it too bad. It's not going to be around long, and I don't think it's going to be a major worry, but it still could be a little bit frisky in the middle of it. We look at these frontal bands, and we think that it does not look like much. The grids don't call out very much wind. But those of you that have been inside these things and have encountered them know that that is just a fairy tale. Quite often they could be fairly aggressive a short period of time, but there could be quite a bit of wind that's coming down as downflow wind. So if you have a fair amount of sail out, you may regret that. What else now? Ideally, it would be better, of course, to arrive prior to this frontal band, and those of you who did take off last week, as we had discussed, should be in before that, and that will have made the passage for you pretty decent. But those of you that waited, I'm afraid are going to have to deal with a few little hiccups. Okay, that's about the story on making the passage. In the tropics today, we've got a major trough that runs from the Solomons right across the Santa Cruz Islands. It then goes to the north of Rotuma. This is the axis now. It goes to the north of Rotuma and Samoa, and onto the southern coast from there. Now, it's a fairly wide trough in terms of distance, so the cloud and showers associated with it are going to affect the northern half of many of the island groups. As an example, Vanuatu, the northern half there is going to be affected by this trough, and also the northern parts of Fiji are going to be affected as well. Now, Tonga on satellite imagery does show quite a bit of cloud, but most of that cloud is within the anticyclonic circulation of the big high that's to the south. It's really not part of that major trough that's coming from the Solomons area, but it's still very real. The clouds are real, and you'll just have to deal with that. So looking a little bit further than at Tonga, expect cloudy periods today, and there'll be some scattered showers today and tomorrow as well, off and on type of thing, and there'll be breaks, of course, in between. The actual conditions early this morning now show Vavau southeast at 6 knots, quite early, about 6 a.m. this morning. Scattered cloud, barometer 1014. The Hapais, roughly east winds at 8 knots, scattered to overcast, barometer also 1014. Then down in Tongatapu, southeast at 6, scattered to broken, and barometer 1016, a little bit of a gradient there. Now the winds will be a little bit fresh this morning, but easing around lunchtime. So they're fairly light now. They're going to pick up for a short period of time and then ease again around the lunchtime period. Tuesday, you could expect east-southeast to southeast winds, and they'll be also in the 15 to 20 knot range. And this should actually continue Wednesday and Thursday. A caution Friday, I see the possibility of cyclonic circulation that is northwest of Vavau. Whether or not that develops and heads down to the Vavau area or heads east to New Potatoes, I'm not sure at this point, but I do see that on some of the frogs on at least one of the models. So just be aware that I do see that on one of them. We'll see what happens. Over to Fiji now. The main axis, as I said, the main axis of the trough is north of the group, but cloud and scattered showers will probably affect a good part of Fiji today. So expect cloudy periods. There'll be a chance of showers. Temperatures are going to be a little bit below average, and that's mainly because of the wind direction. The big high that's to the south is pumping up cooler air. So that'll probably be enjoyable, getting it to cool down just a little bit. Also due to this high in the south, expect fairly fresh southeast winds, I'd say 20 to 25 knots in the open and pretty much unprotected waters. You've got your wind shadow areas, but out in the open areas there could be fairly fresh winds. And I think the winds will probably lighten a bit as this week progresses. Still southeast trades, but more in the 15 to 20 knot range. Over to Vanuatu now. Well, they've got more than enough cloud, particularly the northern half. And again, that's because of the trough to the north, being those clouds being the extension of the Solomons trough. Now, the rest of the cloud that we see, more in the southern parts of Vanuatu, are cloud coming from the anticyclonic flow, again due to the high that's to the south. So expect fresh winds today, east to east-southeast, 15 to 20, favoring the 20 knot range, I would say. Tomorrow, still fresh, east-southeast, and around 20 knots. And finally, over to New Caledonia, imagery does show plenty of cloud, as Patricia mentioned, over the entire country, really, and that includes the loyalties as well. Winds fairly fresh in the lagoon area, southeast 15, 16, getting up to 20 knots, although Ile-de-Pan looking like east-northeast around 15 knots. And by dinner time, possibly or probable easterlies, 15 to 20 in the lagoon with higher gusts. Tuesday looks like easterlies, 10 to 15, a little bit lighter, and partly cloudy on Tuesday. So that's it from what I can see. Any questions or comments, come now. Here's the Chief.
Well, I'm sure that there were quite a few people listening or in the process of getting moving, as you will be over there. I'll just see if there's any questions on the streaming. Certainly Mezzaluna is looking to depart today. Mazu 2, Four Seasons. There's a question for you from Vandy. Any comments on the low forming to the east of the cruising route? It seems to move south and then swoop west toward New Zealand before dissipating. Do your models confirm this dissipation? And do you think leaving a few days or even a week later presents a better window than the current one? So I'm just going to repeat that, I think, for David. Any comments on the low